Hello, this is Peter Davis, and you're listening to Gallifrey Public Radio.
This is Gallifrey Public Radio, a weekly podcast dedicated to positive enjoyment of Doctor Who. We travel through classic and new episodes, explore the extended universe, and play a few games from time to time. We do discuss news, content that has been officially released, and the occasional interesting rumor, but we'll warn you before anything considered spoilers comes up.
Welcome to episode 512 of Gallifrey Public Radio, where we've gotten over a year's worth of talking points in 4 hours of content. I'm Haley.
I'm Jay.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Kier. This week, it's time to get everyone back in the studio to figure out what we've learned and what we haven't from the 4 Doctor Who specials that were broadcast in 2023.
With the fanfare around the return of Russell T Davies as showrunner, David Tennant and Catherine Tate as feature stars, and the arrival of Ncuti Gatwa as the newest Doctor, fans had a lot of expectations.
Depending on Depending on who you ask, those expectations were neared, met, or even exceeded. From the nostalgia to the effects, from the guest stars to the plot twist, the 4 specials were a buffet table of fan topics.
Now, the specials have the level of splashy showmanship, production polish, and blending of the familiar and the new that we'd expect from RTD, but let's be clear, this is not the Davies era of Doctor Who that we had in the aughts.
And there were cheers, and there were tears. And because YouTube will let virtually anyone upload anything, yes, there were some jeers. But for what is essentially that year's season of broadcast material, we have plenty as a fan podcast to work with.
We started with the special that brought everything crashing to Earth after finding out that David Tennant was back, and no one knew why. The Star Beast, directed by Rachel Talalay.
Then the second special put our 2 friends at the literal edge of everything with Wild Blue Yonder, directed by Tom Kingsley.
The culmination point of the 60th Specials trilogy brought us to The Giggle, directed by Chanya Button.
And finally, given the dazzling arrival of 15, we set off on his first adventure, which we most recently unwrapped in The Church on Ruby Road, directed by Mark Tonderai.
So, how did these episodes deal with one of the biggest things dropped on us in the Chibnall area, the Timeless Child?
I think it was a second special. It was Wild Blue Yonder where we first got
reference to it, yeah.
Yeah, and it at that point it was just kind of I'm just gonna leave this little dog ear on the page so that you know this is where I pulled it from, and it didn't really have a whole lot of bearing. But by the time you get into the giggle, it genuinely did.
Yeah, and then the Church of Ruby Road, it's basically addressed like direct head on, with the Doctor saying, "Yeah, no, I was adopted. I came from somewhere else," kind of thing.
don't know my parents. Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. That's it was more than I expected, for sure.
Yeah. Agreed. I thought when we got the little like name check basically in the Wild Blue Yonder, that was going to be it. That was going to be Davies saying, "Yep, no, it happened. I'm recognizing it as quote unquote Doctor Who canon, whatever the hell that means at any given point." But that was all I expected to happen, and then it came back again, and then it came back again. So I'm not sure if he is done with it, or if this is going to be something that he carries forward with it.
Agreed. I feel like with the storyline we're going to see with Ruby, that it might be something that we explore further for both of them as they learn and support each other through, hopefully, this season that will come up eventually.
I had a theory about this. The more I thought about it, and the more I was seeing people reacting to the everything that's been teed up with Ruby's backstory, which we'll get to that in a moment. But it was also connected to the fact that at the end of the giggle, it sort of seemed as if 15 was serving as that sounding board and sort of ad hoc therapist in a way for 14 to say, you're going to work through this. It's sort of, you're empowered to do so. We're going to give you the time and the space that you need to work these things out. So it sort of set 15's persona to be this very listening, empathetic type. And if Ruby is the in-your-face mystery at the moment, then maybe that's something that her arc is sort of working that through. And the Doctor never really has to do much more than just say, I'm speaking to you from a familiar place. And I'm not going to get into my mess and my business, but know that I have the capacity to be able to empathize with you and help you see this through, whether it's to a good result or to something that fails to meet your expectations.
What about the bombshell that was dropped on us and the shaking things up of the bi-generation? How are we feeling about that one?
I thought it was a really clever way to allow some overlap of the Doctors, and I felt like it was a really fun surprise that none of us were sure how that regeneration was going to go, and that we got to see it not just at the end as a capstone, but something in the middle of, and then get to play with both of them together on the screen, I think was really fun.
It's a different way of doing a multi-Doctor story than we've ever seen, and it leaves the door open to get more than one Doctor that we love in a way that we've never had before. And I think it's really hard to judge what it means until we see what they do with it. But I'm interested to see what they do with it.
I mean, it leaves a clear doormat out for miniseries or spin-off material if they wanted to do something that was less necessarily out there, edge of the universe kind of adventure with the Doctor and Donna, but something maybe more mundane, which is equally entertaining. And we could have, the Noble family, and we're just gonna the Temple family.
No, you had it right the first time.
The Noble Temple family. But it's the idea of taking that, this was just a myth, or nobody believed that this was really a possible thing, and saying, yeah, but it's happening, and almost breaking the fourth wall to do so, kind of feels it sparks two things in my mind. One, it says that they're continuing to play on the fringes of what this show has tinkered with for decades. Keeps reinventing itself, but it keeps adding layers of, yeah, but what if this kind of thing was possible, and just make it weirder and weirder in order to keep it fresh. But then there's also the aspect of putting it in so that it connects to, Jay, what you were saying about the again, Wild Blue Yonder, which we didn't think was going to be as pivotal as it turned out to be. The putting the superstition out there and seeing whether there is a repercussions more than just Mavity.
Mavity is the most important thing, though.
Well, yes. I mean,
it's one of the fundamental laws of the universe.
Right. And as everybody knows from those bands in the 90s, Mavity kills. But the point is that if this allows for, now that we've got goblins in the Christmas special, and we're bringing fantasy into it, like straight up fantasy, instead of even pseudoscience, and the counting the salt and the supernatural aspects, and now we've got something where we're taking what was potentially a Gallifreyan myth, and it can now happen because that line has been blurred between what is imagined and what is, because of that error in judgment. That could be a season arc right there.
That's what I was just about to say, is I think that superstition at the end of the universe opened the door for a lot of potential storylines or effects of things that have some opportunity to see how they play out, and how we might or might not have some kind of curve back into itself with, is there a split timeline? Is there something else that will kind of button at the other end? and we're not quite sure, which I think is really fun because of seeing a showrunner be able to put some of those either Easter eggs when we look back or just clues that we don't know yet are clues until we get there. And we can point back to it and say, oh, remember when, which then kind of brings you back around to, hey, I want to do a rewatch because I didn't realize that all of this is now played into it later on.
Well, that was the tail end of my potshot theory, was that in some way this addresses the owning or taking ownership of the Timeless Child and the Flux, because one thing that wasn't really touched upon at all, except for the one line that Tennant gives again in Wild Blue Yonder, was the destruction of half the universe. And so is nobody noticing the fact that this has happened, and all the fallout for that? Does this allow us at some point over the season or seasons to come to find a way to dovetail that so that it corrects the repercussions? It doesn't retcon it, but it like dovetails it.
It heals it, like instead of making it so it never happened, it heals what was done.
Right.
Possibly.
Aside from the emotional repercussions for the Doctor, what would that mean for the viewer, though? Like, we get that, okay, half of the universe was destroyed, but that really doesn't mean anything to us as viewers. So there's not really anything to undo aside from the Doctor's guilt about it, which apparently, because they're out of order, we don't have to really worry about if we don't want to.
I don't know. It feels like such a large thing to leave out. Literally one of the largest possible things you could leave out.
Yeah, as much as we don't want to really revisit the Flux storyline, because I think we all agree it wasn't executed as well as it could have been, do we maybe need to see some consequences of it? Like the Doctor wanting to revisit somewhere we've been before and somewhere we cared about and is like, oh, that's not there anymore.
I want to see it persist. I want to see the fallout from it. I don't want to see it healed or undone.
Okay.
Like that there's really no purpose for that for us as viewers. So let us have the stories where that has some impact, but there's no need to go back on it. There's no need to fix it. It's not Gallifrey being destroyed. It's it's thousands of unnamed planets that we're never going to visit anyway.
Right. Yeah, let us see the consequences of it, but don't make it be essential to a fix or Band-Aid or reinvention of things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that. One other thing that I really wanted to talk about was the fact that we see some difference in some time travel. So things happening at the end of the universe where the TARDIS took everyone, and then also a little bit of the goblins being able to literally wipe Ruby from existence by changing something. I think it was like floating on the time rift or something like that with the crack.
Time Riders.
Time Riders, yeah. So a little bit back to what you said, Kier, about some different fantasy, science fiction-y type of stuff, less specific science. But how do we feel about that? Did we feel like it flowed nicely between episodes and across all four of what we got to see?
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoy seeing the different takes on how time travel can be handled, because sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it's like, yeah, that's how it would play out kind of thing. And other times it's completely bonkers. And I like seeing all the different iterations and the thought process of like, what would happen if kind of thing. And it just makes for interesting storytelling in a show that can bounce around and be like, yes, these are 5 different possibilities of how time travel is handled, and they're all true.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm concerned about is the precedent that it's setting for how wide you can throw the doors open, and that it dilutes in a way the premise of the show being this time traveler who goes around either advertently or inadvertently setting things right when they are either being taken away from true or are just being exploited in a way where something can and should be done. If we start getting into too far into the Like the day when they finally start acknowledging or incorporating theology, straight up theology in the show, which is something that they have very carefully tried to stay clear of. They just didn't want to get into that with the viewing audience. But there was the one line with the exchange with the toy maker saying, or whatever the line was, but basically challenged God and made him a jack-in-the-box. And it was the first time capital G God had shown up in a script other than someone just expressing, oh my God.
Well, we mentioned it at the time, but also in Wild Blue Yonder, Tennant's doctor has the line about edge of creation and using that specific term, and we hear the doctor use.
I'm not sure if a continuing trend like that is something that I'd personally think to add to the show. It may be executed very well. That's what it does, and I'd be more than happy to witness it if that's what transpires. But it's probably not what I would ask to see. It's not like something I've said, this show needs more, magic and fantasy creatures and Vorpal swords.
Yeah, I don't think I want necessarily more of that specifically, like you're saying, but I don't mind it creeping in here and there, especially if that's kind of a theme that is brought throughout. But yeah, I don't want to all of a sudden see, oh, the TARDIS landed here in a forest and there's a unicorn. How do we deal with this? Like, that seems like it would be a step too far.
It's probably a robot.
I 100% want to see a unicorn. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Maybe some other creature, but, just go visit the narwhals.
From unicorns and rainbows, let's take a hard left. And I want to talk about some of the horror elements that we got in these stories, specifically the body horror stuff that we had to deal with the not Doctor and not Donna and their horrifying shifting kind of thing. Mm-hmm. The marionette guy in the Giggle, like, these are things that, while not new to Doctor Who, we haven't had this much thrown at us all at once in any time that I can remember.
I wonder if this is where Russell is at the moment with what he thinks the show needs to tap into from time to time in order to stay on pace with a lot of other entertainment forms out at the moment. Whether or not that's your jam, but it's this is not quite. It's clearly not as campy, visually campy. The writing may still be, at times, you got those obvious. Oh, you went there. Oh, ooga, I get you. But from a visual standpoint, you've got to kind of step up a little bit because there's a lot of content out there that is doing some very edgy stuff. And if your audience is potentially desensitized to it, then you need to make sure that you're keeping them in hand. It could have been intensified because this was the specials, but I don't know. This is your next volley out of the gate, and this is what you're giving the audience. It
definitely raises the stakes some because there's a legitimate and real threat to your person as well as emotional and psychologically, which we don't get a lot of in this show historically. And then I think, too, part of it might be that the practical effects are more fun to see. And so some of what they were able to bring in on the ship with the big arms and the melty legs and stuff is very fun for, the creation of how they're setting up the show. And then same with the dolls, right? You get a lot of that fun manipulation of things instead of just like, oh, there's something wrong with this human, but no, he's been legit turned into a doll. And that's a very different feel, a very different vibe than anything that we've seen. And it does, I'm not a huge fan of that, but I don't think it was out of place.
Like I said, it's not the first time that we've had it. I mean, you think about the peg dolls, you think about the Idiot's Lantern where you've had the people's faces removed, like even going back to like the Ark in Space, granted the budget was low, but having green bubble wrap on somebody's arm, but having somebody like transform like that was the idea was there, if not the execution.
And not to mention, we were taken aback at it wasn't necessarily visual, but even just the implication of adding things like the unit soldiers falling to their deaths.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the intensity level of everything has been cranked up a bit, and it's surprising. And I wouldn't be surprised if to a certain percentage of the viewing audience, it's jarring.
This ain't no kids show no more.
Well, maybe the kids are a little hardier kids. Oh.
I mean, this is kind of the show that coined the phrase of hiding behind the sofa. So I think it's about time we get back to that.
Yeah, but that was a plunger and a whisk. I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
This is
Now you hand a kid a plunger and a whisk these days, they're not going to be scared of it. They're looking at it as weaponry. Julie, you had just actually alluded to this as far as the Doctor in the midst of all of this, and their levels of emotional investment and attunement, really, to other characters around. And that applies to both 14 and 15, I think, to a certain degree, because 14 was really taking a lot of the, I dare say, emotional flaws of 10. And those moments where maybe it's not a flaw, but it's a matter of the perspective of saying, I'm willing to let everything else burn for her, and those kind of judgment calls, and just being that intense. And then we've got 15, who is equally intense, but not in terms of just the reactions and the takes and those things, but it's a matter of the amount of feeling and again, the empathy. I keep coming to that word. When Carla is unable to remember her family, when the rift happens and all the photos are gone from the refrigerator and everything, it's the Doctor who's crying for the realization of what is lost long before she has any kind of that back of the mind ping that gets her upset. So he's wearing his heart as far out in his sleeve as physically possible, and is constantly looking to and checking in on the state of everyone around, even back to the television camera, the interviewer who really wasn't connected to the Doctor at all. But that was the thing. I said, I forgot something. I got to go tend to this. That's the thing he's tending to. This is, it seems like it's casting this new Doctor in a light that is a matter of, right now, we need a therapist. Right now, we need a listening ear. We need a sympathetic friend.
Well, and it's interesting that we're getting it now, because if you go way back to early in Tennant's run, the episode with the werewolf, where at the end, like, the people around them are having tragedy in their lives, and the Doctor and Rose are just so excited about the adventure they've been on. I don't think we ever get a scene like that with this Doctor and this companion.
Yeah, I would also argue that the Doctor's willing to go through more or take things further, especially in the Christmas special, where the solution was not to adjust and correct what had been done in the past, but it was to literally take out the goblins and have them be completely wiped from existence in whatever form that takes. Like, they were just gone to our perspective. But that has to have some other in-story consequences, or we may see that play out additionally in the Doctor's willingness to push the envelope a little bit further and take players off the board rather than just redirect or defend. It was a very aggressive attack on to fix what was going wrong, but definitely more than what we've seen in the past, with not really wanting to use weapons or use other destructive nature. But this definitely was that.
The Doctor always said that I hate guns. They never said I hate church spires. Those are always those were always
fair
on
enough.
the list.
Hey,
it's not murder; it's the means.
Right. If you can't control wood, just use what's there and drop things onto it. It's fine. But
yeah, drop the ship in around the wood.
It was around it. How am I to know that it was going to go right through the heart of the Goblin King?
Your Honor, I didn't stab them. I just threw them against the blade repeatedly.
I used totally Mavity to my advantage, and he
ran into my church spire. He ran into my church spire 8 times.
I had one last thought on this, again, I always try to throw suspicions at the long view. Right now, as we'll get to in the news, there are a lot of people that want to be upset about this. They want to rail against the things that their beloved Russell, who is going to be the savior of their show, is not packing away in a box and pretending that it doesn't exist. If anything, the light is being shown brighter and the mirrors turn more towards, as Davies himself has said, the individuals who make up the world around us. We want to see our world intensified into this, science fiction phenomenon. We don't want to see a world that we can't connect with, because that way, if you don't do so, then you are not providing something that an audience, capital A, can appreciate. So is there a possibility that you've got a doctor who is dialed in and is starting to notice all these things and takes the unusual path through these intense situations and intensifying situations amidst a viewing audience that is getting more and more polarized, and saying, no, you can all be as angry as you want. I'm in here to listen to people, to care for people, to set things right, and be that much brighter of a representative entity for that reaction, rather than being one that spirals into the time war or what have you.
I personally like seeing the representation, and I hope that that's how, and I think that it will be, how this story will continue to unfold. From the very first special and through, the band that Ruby's in, if those characters come back at all, I think we can see some more representation, and the fact that the Doctor pays attention to that and acknowledges it and cherishes it. I'm hopeful that I want this show to represent the people that I love, and I think that that's awesome, and I do hope that carries through. And I think you can't do that if you have a Doctor who's not, who doesn't have a temperament that can handle different personalities and connect with them. And that is important, and I think it will carry through.
So one of the things that I wanted to touch on before we start to wrap up is what we got a lot of fun returning characters in this one. Obviously Donna, her mom, the standout being Wilf, but we were also introduced to a lot of really great new characters. I'm curious, who are the ones that stand out to you guys the most? Who do you want to see come back?
I think I'm going to cherry pick that.
Is that the low-hanging fruit?
That is the low-hanging fruit. I'm just going to cherry pick that one. I'll get out of your way.
But in honesty, Ruby's family is a delight. They're an interesting little blend of people. And then obviously there's the Mrs. Flood mystery that we know that we want to pursue more. So everything sort of surrounding her flat is going to be kind of interesting, even down to the arguments with the neighbors or the arguments amongst the neighbors and that kind of thing is all kind of charming. We always love the periphery characters. It's like Yaz's family was amazing. I think I said at one point that if I could just have more of them involved, well, now I've got that sort of thing. I don't have the bickering sister, but so be it. It's a nice tee up. We know we're going to see more Mel in some capacity, but there's the whole aspect of what has been now added to Unit. So we've got Shirley, and
Shirley
and the robot whose name I'm never going to remember. There you go,
Z-Box, something maybe.
Sure, Zaphod. Yeah, that one.
Zabadex.
The spaghetti robot, PastaBot. Yeah. I'm going with PastaBot.
Really? That's not accepting of his culture.
He has a culture now,
or their culture. I assume gender pronouns. I apologize, robot.
I'm looking forward to seeing Rose come back, Rose Noble. Mm-hmm. I want to see how she gets tied into the story, and I'm super excited to see more Shirley because I thought she was absolutely fantastic. So those are my two. Aside from the obvious, Cherry Sunday, but
well, it would make a lot of sense to have that power set of characters if we know that Unit is sort of developing itself into something where now, since the Tom Baker era or prior, that we wanted to know more about what Unit was up to on a day-to-day, and having the Bentons and characters like that to want to check in on. So because now we've got our science expert, we've got Rose, who still has, at least in some capacity, some of the infinite knowledge of the meta crisis. Yeah. So, and we don't know, and we want to find out how much more of that still resides within her and allows her to be a valuable resource. Donna got a job with Unit, or at least got an offer. Whether she gets to keep the job or she screws it up, I don't know what's going to happen.
We'll see how she handles her coffee.
Yeah. I feel like they're pretty forgiving at Unit because they know that it's all going to the crapper if we don't pick it up and do our good job. So
Donna Noble brand iced coffee juice boxes, everybody.
They make
you ruined
those.
3 floors worth of It's fine. This building's going to get destroyed in 2 weeks anyway.
We've already got the contract started on the one down the road because we know.
Right.
We build them in triplicate now. It's just more efficient.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great character set that we've had sort of recently handed to us that I'd love to see do more.
And the fact that the TARDIS is built and ready for a larger group, as well as it's handicap accessible, which is amazing because it allows for different involvement.
It is a lot of pathways in there with all the ramps and things, and not a lot of like landing surfaces. You got the console, and you got a bunch of stuff winding around it to doors. That's a lot of wasted space.
I don't feel like it's wasted space because you can stack a lot of people, sort of like a stage where you've got a lot of people just kind of like standing or parked along the railing, and everyone's shouting down over.
So back to Haley's question about musical numbers. Yeah, big ensemble numbers. The acoustics in there have got to be banging.
I mean, if you have a jukebox, you had best make sure that it can reverberate appropriately.
With an amazing light show to boot. So there you go.
So with the jukebox being mentioned, that leads us to the final point that we want to touch here. What are the unanswered questions that we have moving forward? I mean, Kier already mentioned the Mrs. Flood mystery and what's going on with that. The obvious whose fingernails were those that we saw picking up the Master's tooth. What are some other ones I'm forgetting here?
Ruby's parentage. There you go. Who was the individual in the hooded cloak? Was it 13? And if it was, why?
It's not. Don't worry.
I don't know. They made such a big deal about the high water pants.
Who is the boss that was mentioned by
Tony Danza?
Well, other than
who is the boss, and are they the same as the one who waits?
Yep.
Right.
Or are they two separate entities?
Mm-hmm. It's the hybrid.
Where does the villain character that Jinx Monsoon is going to be playing fit into this, or is it just a one-off? The tooth. The tooth is a good one. Although there's other aspects of that whole exchange that I wanted to know whether that was that Russell leaving breadcrumbs to say, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna touch on Norse mythology. I'm gonna hit all these things. It's gonna be fantastic when you get there." And I want to know what other aspects of the Timeless Child or any elements of the Flux arc are gonna have a long tail here, or is it something that he just wanted to sort of pull an embrace around and say, we take our ugly kids with our beautiful kids and we put them all in the family photo and leave it at that.
And does Wilf ever actually get the moles?
I don't think that's just there in the perpetuity of he's hunting forever.
We're never going to get that answer.
No, that's the end.
But that's the big question I have.
Yeah.
What new aspects we got the new Sonic, right? And we've been sort of wondering about that thing, whether it's sort of going to be pulled back as far as what it can accomplish, or is it just going to continue to get the magic trick of the week?
Who is the woman that is buying all the toys in?
Yes, when do we see
country?
Susan, who's living in Uganda?
She could have moved.
Abu Dhabi. It was Abu Dhabi. Who loved buying up all the gonks. Susan.
She's out there. She's waiting. She's ready. I heard it. She told me.
So, wrapping up, we made it through most of 2023 waiting for these specials, so it should feel like nothing to now wait until May to begin the new season. Right? Right?
Yeah, we can make it. It's not that far.
It's not.
We're 4 weeks out, so we got another 4 months.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it has felt longer. It has felt worse in the past with these breaks. This one doesn't quite hurt as much, and I think I have to credit a little bit of that to the fact that the marketing department is just killing it with material out there all the time. So if they're not providing new things, they're at least keeping the conversations and the theories and everything else floating so that people can continue to talk about it and stay excited about it until something new is there to put in their hands.
I think the thing that's getting to me the most right now is knowing that it's coming. Before it was just hey, you'll get Doctor Who at some nebulous point in the future, and you just kind of had to take every day as well, maybe no news today. Now we actually know. So there's the anticipation is actually real now, and it's driving me up the wall.
It's more fun to wonder about something that you know the answer is there and it's being withheld from you than just wondering about something and not even knowing if there's an answer.
But here's the thing. You could watch one of these episodes every day for the upcoming months, and then you'd have enough content to get you there. And you won't get tired, I promise.
She promises. There's a lot of mavity in that statement.
You have enough time to compare that hand picking up the tooth to every actress in Hollywood and Britain. So, get on it.
And let's hope that it wasn't just this guy's aunt who happened to be on set and they said, can you just go pick this up for us, please?
We camera was rolling. We had taken it off of the dolly and it was just laying there. We forgot.
And they're like, oh, we could use that.
I'm telling you, it looked like a Zarby hand.
Yeah.
It looked just like a Zarby hand. I have to see what color nail polish Carol Ann Ford wears on a regular basis.
Not like they couldn't have her change it. No.
Nah. When you got a signature,
it's got to be what she normally wears.
Yeah.
We've gotten a fair bit of news in the intervening weeks.
Intervening news in intervening weeks. I don't really know. Well, yeah, a lot of this stuff comes. We were getting things right around when the specials were airing. There was stuff happening simultaneously as they were airing, where here's stuff about next week or so on. And then it slowed down a little bit, and the rumor mill had already been churned up to full speed and said, "Nah, we're not done. We have more things to talk about, even if you're not going to put out any official press releases. We're going to spread rumors." The problem is sometimes these rumors might work. Where do you want to begin?
Let's talk about the most recent big story that we have to put out the caveat that this has, as of time of this recording, has not been confirmed, but it is being reported by so many places that it's starting to look like it's actually legit. Mm-hmm. The rumor is out that Millie Gibson is going to be out after one series as the companion.
Yeah.
That feels like a bummer.
It is. And I've been thinking about this a lot for the last couple of days. I think what threw me was not the fact that it's happening, because it happens. And the timing of it really isn't unprecedented at all. Other than the fact that it's going to be a short season. It's only 8 episodes. So plus the Christmas special that she had been in. So but maybe as far as total airtime, it's a little bit light, but it's not unheard of for Martha. Had a single season and didn't really get.
Donna had half a season and a couple specials.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Bill was a single season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill was a single season.
Some of our most beloved.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
it's because they hit it hard, they tell their story, and then they leave you wanting more. They go home before you get tired of them, which every family member should understand.
So the thing that's bothering me the most is most of the news articles that are covering this are using the phrase that she is being dropped from the show.
Yeah.
And that kind of it feels like the kind of stuff that was coming out about Colin Baker or about Christopher Eccleston. It makes it feel like there is some kind of issue going on that meant she had to be let go. But we know that while she's not going to be in the next Christmas special, she did do some filming for season 2. So it makes me feel like while she might be leaving after the first season as the companion, she will be back for a couple story beats or something moving forward. So that doesn't feel like we've got to write her out because issues. Right. So I don't know where to look at this.
I have to wonder if it's because of the filming schedule and people are seeing a different somebody on set, and rather than be behind it, because of, as Keir mentioned, the marketing is much more dialed in and engaged. They want to get in front of it. Yeah, the language is what it is, and hopefully it's not something bad. Hopefully it's just like whoever's reporting it, but that we're getting the info, and it's just one of those like, this is happening, let's keep you up to date so you're not seeing set photos and wondering.
Right. Which is kind of they're at the tipping point right now, because if they don't make any kind of a statement, it's all but confirmed, because there's no, as we're going to find out in a second, there are things out there like production contracts and documentation that goes along with preparing for filming and casting, that for talent houses and such, where this stuff leaves a paper trail, and it's a digital paper trail at this point, and most of this stuff with very little effort is generally publicly accessible. So if you don't, the production team, the marketing team, the BBC drama, don't decide to just say, we're so thrilled to have had this time with Ms. Gibson to provide a character that we know you've seen glimpses of and you're going to adore for the season to come, and so on, and put the PR together. If they don't do that, then that leaves these sources with unconfirmed material that isn't being discounted, and they just get to churn and get to apply the verbs like dropped rather than is leaving or has taken on another role.
I don't know, but hopefully we get some news one way or the other before too long, because it's going to get out of control if the BBC doesn't address the rumor at this point.
Right. Yeah, so I think the only thing that was really jarring me about it was just the fact that it was happening so early. If this were mid-season this season or this coming season, it wouldn't really seem like much, because I think we kind of knew when Jenna Coleman was exiting. We kind of knew we would see the writing on the wall for some of the other talent involved in the show, but we were in the middle of consuming their content, so it didn't feel quite as final or abrupt. It's like we just met her. And now we're already trying to figure out, well, how are they going to work her out of this?
Yeah, that's a problem with working 2 seasons ahead. I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. But that's a good
point.
Already recorded everything she's got to go, likely. Maybe there's some very interesting twist that we will find out about, and it doesn't have to be the cliffhanger end of the season because she's going to be on a little bit. I'm not mad at that, but because of times being what they are and everything being so accessible and out there, you have to get ahead of some of that stuff. And this is the fallout of that. This is the problem with content that's already in production.
Well, I think that this is the kind of thing that, like, this is the way the news cycle is going to go now. And the news comes much quicker now than it did when Martha was the companion. When Freema left the show, you didn't get these kind of, instant updates like you do now. And we're not used to it because the gaps in the series have been so long before now that news didn't seem like it was abrupt at that point. So this just might be the new normal.
It's also just a different social media landscape that we have.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't have this kind of engagement and paparazzi going to spoil
snoopery.
Things. Yeah.
But why don't they all just do like Skywalker Ranch and build a giant filming dome?
Because then you wouldn't get all of the variety of scenery that we see in Doctor Who, and
Wouldn't
I'm
you
not mad.
know?
No, I don't think
You could just
would.
green screen that in.
Yeah, it works for the Mandalorian. Look, they go to other worlds and stuff. Worlds!
Yeah, but it's all just gray, sandy worlds. It's not that bad. We're talking
Sometimes-
way different.
Sometimes it's got a lagoon that's like full of dinosaurs and stuff.
Sure.
Like the Thames.
Moving to our next piece of news.
Yes. Yeah, we mentioned the unit team and wanting to be able to see some continued adventures with them. This may not be what you had in mind. And this is, I guess I kind of call this unconfirmed, but still sort of rumory too. It alludes to the fact that there's documentation out there for things that are potentially being greenlit for production. And the thought is that we do have a series that has been given the nod. We don't know how many episodes it might be or when it's expected to be something to be handed forth, but it would be filming within the year to follow that involves UNIT, but not what we thought it was going to be. It's kind of the Sea Devils in UNIT?
The amount of information we have on this is so light and filled with speculation. I'm not willing to accept it at face value. This could be something as simple as one of the first monsters they have to go up against is Sea Devils.
Okay.
So I'm not going to jump down this rabbit hole and be like, what kind of series would they do with Sea Devils? You really can't.
Right.
But you don't know.
It's just a thing saying like there's paperwork that the Sea Devils, somebody wrote down Sea Devils on something, so they've got to be involved in something, and it's all kind of speculation and guesswork at this point. So
you're thinking that rather than the series being about this, this is just sort of the production write up for an episode of that series, and it's just being sort of mistitled.
It might be that they are the primary antagonist that UNIT has to deal with. They become the go-to kind of how we had the Weevils in Torchwood. You've got the Sea Devils that are the kind of constant threat that they can throw in whenever they need to. I don't know. Right. That's the thing, is that we have so little to go on here that you can throw anything at the wall and see what sticks and maybe be right. So I'm going to wait until we get a little bit more information on this before I start really getting excited.
I'm not as familiar with what these kind of documents represent as far as what ink has been dried or potentially how much money has been put into throwing these stakes in the ground. But I'm wondering if this kind of works in some capacity like a patent office sort of thing. We want to just I'm going to place this holder here, and I might pursue it if some of these other things take off, or we might just abandon it if our resources are going to be better allocated towards these 5 other things that you didn't find out about.
Yeah, I don't know what British licensing deals may look like, so it's hard for me to guess.
Yeah. Well, you do have some things that you can guess. And they can guess about one of our beloved current villains as we go through our classic rewatch, and that's the Rani, because the Rani was actually supposed to get name-checked in our specials and was mysteriously removed from the final edit of the script. You determine why, but it happened during an exchange between Donna and Mel at the end of the Giggle, when the bi-generation was being witnessed. And I think Donna had asked Mel if she had ever seen anything of this sort before, and Mel had to explain that no, she didn't get to see Colin Baker's regeneration because she was unconscious, having been knocked unconscious by the Rani, and that was trimmed from the cut.
I have to think that it was cut because of pacing and timing, and just it's not important enough to keep in to slow down the moment that as it was happening, or right after, then it feels delayed and like you're plugging it. So that it got released, I'm not mad about if that becomes something, as we're hoping and guessing, because I think it would be a fun Time Lord to see. But I don't think that I would be upset that it got cut.
No, I mean, especially when you think about where this would have taken place, and in the first viewing, we're meant to believe that this is the regeneration. This was an emotional moment for us. We were about to say goodbye to David Tennant again. And to throw in dialogue like this would have just completely let the air out of that balloon. It would have felt like, no, I'm in the middle of my feels right now, and you're trying to throw lore at me, and I don't want it. Mm-hmm. So taking that out and letting the moment be what it is, looking back on it now, it's like, yeah, you could have thrown dialogue in and it would have been fine because we didn't actually have to, go sobbing into our pillow. But in the moment, it would have felt terrible.
It just left me with the question as to what there has to be tomes of great one-liners and exchanges that were left on the editing room floor for that very reason. Mm. Why did this one get shared with the public to say, by the way, did you know? We took this out.
Because RTD has gotten to a level of teasing the audience that few can aspire to.
He is the troll under the bridge.
He is having a conversation that I do not know if I'm ready for.
Because they're priming the audience for the Ronnie to come back, just like they did with the Toy Maker.
Well, and that's the thing, is it may be that the Ronnie is coming back. It may not be. It may be that Russell is just winding us up because he knows that name keeps coming up in fan circles. And he's like, hey, there was actually a line in there. What does that do for you guys? And then just watch us start spinning and chasing our tails.
Yeah.
So
because he reads the comments of all the people who shouldn't be reading the comments, he reads the comments and he giggles at them.
Yeah. So we'll see if anything actually comes of it, but it is interesting that it was put in there.
It's true.
When we come back in a couple of weeks, we will be going back to our classic rewatch with the two doctors.
Yeah. Double your doctors, double your companions. This one, you get multi-companions, which is always cool. It's not just a multi-doctor.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to revisit this one again.
Mm-hmm.
This has been episode 512 of Gallifrey Public Radio. Until next time, this is Jay saying, I'm going to go take a nap. Somebody wake me up when it's May.
And this is Kira saying, Noble brand sippy cups.
This is Julie saying, because there is such a law as Mavity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing.
And this is Haley saying, does anybody else hear a dog?
We'll see you next time.
I'm Ozzy.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Gallifrey Public Radio. Want to keep the conversation going? You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or just send us a good old-fashioned email to feedback@gallifreypublicradio.com. You can also give us a phone call at 754-225-5477. That's 754-CALL-GPR, and you may hear your voice on a future episode of the show. Everything's got to end sometime, otherwise nothing would ever get started. Join us next week for a brand new episode.
Hi, this is Jacob. This recording of Gallifrey Public Radio is copyrighted in 2024. GPR is a fan-owned, fan-produced podcast. We'll see you next time!